It's a trap!
Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Kia ora, brothers. It's the director. Chargers fans. Oh my God. Never in my wildest dreams could I have ever imagined this become the result of the Chargers-Texans game. I will say we did mention at some point in the preview video that this could turn into a trap game due to the inactives because of COVID. And I think that's exactly what we saw on Sunday. The issue is the Houston Texans had even more inactive players due to the inactive list, right? And still the Chargers fell short. And I think a couple of things we can take away from this game might be lack of depth, the coaching, etc., etc. There are some majorly important lessons that we can take from this game, especially concerning the 2022 season and what this roster needs to do in order to evolve into a Super Bowl contender. Because there's a lot, guys. There's a lot that we got to do. Tom Telesco's lack of depth was put on full display in this game, and this might be the most embarrassing game that I've seen since our loss to the winless Cleveland Browns so many years ago. I was disappointed, man. I was hurt, I was disappointed, and severely depressed after the game. This was a tough one. So before we do get into this video, guys, question for you guys in the comments. Very simple today. Do you think we can still make the playoffs? Correction. Do you think we do still make the playoffs? Are the Chargers going to be a playoff team in 2021? Yes or no? In the comment section below, let me know. Well, before we do get started again, guys, giveaway has been announced for the members section of the website here on YouTube. We did announce the winner, NV Talent, as the winner of our signed full-size Keenan Allen helmet. Congratulations to him. As well, Xavier Ramirez as the winner of our Justin Herbert signed jersey. You guys have been sent instructions on how to contact me, and we can get that sent out to you as soon as possible. Congratulations to you guys. So there is some good news coming in to today if you are those two people. I think, guys, get ready for my next giveaway. We are already starting to look around for some more items to get you guys excited for the postseason and the upcoming off season. With that, let's get into this one. Before we do, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this one. We got to a lot to unpack and a lot to learn and take away from this one. Lights, camera, action. The Chargers at Texans post-game report. We're going to call this one the Meltdown. How about that? Now, again, there are some majorly important lessons that we have to take away from this game. So I know it's painful. Nobody wants to relive the loss that should have been a win, one that was definitely riddled with inactives, and there's this and that, ifs and buts, but it really comes down to this is a game that the Chargers dropped that we should have won, and it does point out a lot of things wrong with this roster. So before we start picking around the game a little bit, first our playoff outlook. Now, I do want to emphasize before we move on, the Chargers are still playoff hopefuls, okay? There are a couple of things that can happen that honestly are pretty realistic that help the Chargers make the postseason with the 7th seed. The Chargers are no longer in contention for the AFC West. I think that's pretty obvious, but we're not kicked out of the playoffs just yet. Taking a look right now, the Chargers are on the bubble at 8-7 with the Ravens, the Patriots, and the Colts in front of them. There's a couple of things that can happen, okay, guys? First off, and I'm going to explain step by step how the Chargers still make the postseason. I might do a separate video on this just to make it even more clear, but in layman's terms, this is what's got to happen, okay? Chargers need to beat their final two opponents, the Broncos and the Raiders. No ifs, ands, or buts. We have got to beat these two teams in order to make it to the postseason. That's the Chargers part. Now, with the Chargers having players coming back from injury and the COVID list, I think that's absolutely possible. But it really is going to shake down to, can the Chargers take down their AFC West rivals? Next up, the Ravens, who are 8-7 right here, are going to have to lose at least one of their final two games to the Rams or the Steelers. Honestly, I think the Rams can definitely take on the Ravens, especially considering they might not have Lamar Jackson back. But Baltimore does own the tiebreaker over Los Angeles based on the head-to-head win percentage. Okay? Lastly, the Miami Dolphins, who we're going to see down here, who are also on the bubble, need to lose at least one of their final 3 games versus the Saints, the Titans, or the Patriots. So if you guys are watching Monday Night Football, definitely be rooting for the Saints to take this one. Tough defense. Hopefully they can get the job done. If they do that, then and the Chargers win their final 2 games, there's still a chance that we make it into the 7th seed. But it really comes down to what the Chargers themselves do here, because there's a lot going on as far as inactives. We already know that we don't have Mike Williams next week. I think there was a report that Nasir Adderley as well as Chris Harris Jr. will be missing that game as well. I'd hate to see a meltdown at the last part of the season with the Chargers still hopeful to make the postseason, but it is what it is. Now, it's time to learn from our experience on Sunday. If you guys were in my chat, we had like 1,300 people in there. It was absolutely insane. Such a heartbreaker. People were going left and right, kind of panicking. I was too. Let's take a look at the box score real quick and give you guys an idea of the stats that were put up on Sunday. Herbert. Now, I know it looked like he had a terrible game. There were some mistakes. We'll talk about that in a second. But 336 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. Not the worst day of his career. Davis Mills, 2 touchdowns on 254 yards, no interceptions. Made him look pretty good out there. Jackson, 64 for 2 on the ground. Rex Burkhead, which we'll talk about in just a second as well. And then here are some of your receiving stats, too. I'm not going to highlight anything too crazy because we are going over a lot of stuff individually, okay? So let's start breaking this game down a little bit. What can we learn from this game, taking it into the postseason? And more importantly, in my opinion, what can we learn from this game to better this team in 2022? I hate starting to think about 2022, even though this year hasn't ended quite yet. But there are some big, big things the Chargers need to adjust if we want to be Super Bowl hopefuls in 2022. So the first topic here, a mess of inactives. You guys know this. The Chargers had, like 17 players not active in this game. Most of our superstars outside of Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen. Very, very tough to stomach that one. There's really no excuses, though, like I mentioned at the top of the show. Houston had even more inactives than we did and a worse overall roster. We have Justin Herbert. I feel like if a couple of things went a little bit different, if the defense just stepped up a little bit, Chargers should have won this game. But no ifs, ands, and buts. The Chargers had the better roster going into this game on Sunday, even given all the inactives. One very surprising inactive just before kickoff that really did affect this game massively was the inactive or the status of Michael Davis, who was added to the report just moments before kickoff. His replacement got burned over and over again. We'll talk about him in a second. So the lack of playmakers on defense just very much so left us exposed. And I'm hearing a lot of Chargers fans ask this question since Sunday. Who's to blame? Who's to blame? And I hate saying, pointing fingers. Who are we blaming this loss on? Who's going to take the fall for this one? It's less of that and more of an observation, okay? I think the players, first and foremost, are to blame, especially on defense, right? But also Tom Telesco, if you really want to, start digging down into it. The lack of depth on this team was put on full blast this week. And I think it really does come down to the Chargers' lack of success in the mid to late rounds of the NFL draft. That's a glaring issue. We've had a couple of players hit. Desmond King, who's no longer around. Drew Tranquill. Outside of that, can't really think of too many more. Keenan Allen, obviously, but it's been a long time. The Tom Telesco era has not been good for depth on the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Telesco can certainly make up for this next offseason with $70-80 million in cap space. He can sign his depth to the roster without really even putting a dent in the cap. But at the same time, his lack of depth, his lack of constructing a roster at that level really was put on blast on Sunday. The Chargers, second and third stringers on defense, just could not get it done. Maybe a lack of playmaking, understanding, coaching as well could be part of that issue, but I think mainly it has to do to the Chargers' lack of success in the draft, in drafting backup players. So that's really what it came down to for the Chargers, especially on defense. Speaking of defense, a defensive collapse. Without Derwin, without Bosa, without Davis, and at times Tranquill, this defense was pitiful. Backup cornerback, if we want to, point one out, backup cornerback Devonte Harris, who was just signed to the roster a couple weeks ago. He should only be used on special teams, if that. I know a lot of Chargers fans were worried about Tevon Campbell. Compared to Devonte Harris, Tevon Campbell is freaking, I don't know. prime time out there, Deion Sanders. It wasn't good. It wasn't good for Devonte Harris, man. Every single opportunity that Davis Mills had to pass in his direction, he took, and usually there was, a guy beating Devonte Harris on that side. The pass rush wasn't good enough. Tillery and company had their moments, but they really did come up short. I think everything about this loss really does fall on the shoulders of the defense. The offense just really wasn't given an opportunity to do much of anything. I think at one point of the game, the time of possession was something like 20 minutes to 30 minutes. That is absolutely insane. It's not the way you win football games. The defense had to get off the field, and they just weren't able to do their part. Largely in part to this man right here, Rex Burkhead. You guys know Rex Burkhead of the New England Patriots from like the 1912s? Yeah, he's back. Chargers defense allowed over 100 yards. I'm going to say what was 150 yards on the grounds and 2 scores to the Texans' backup running back, veteran running back who's been in the league so long. You know how long? Burkhead hasn't had a 100-yard game in 5 years. I think 2016 was the last time he had a 100-yard performance. I think he only had 1 touchdown on the season prior to this game as well. We talked about Rex Burkhead and the impact he could have on this game. I was like, yeah, we got to shut him down quick, but he hasn't scored much. He hasn't put up many yardage. He puts up one of the best fantasy days you can get this week against the Chargers' poor run defense. Sure, a lack of depth, you can definitely look in that direction and say, oh, man, we definitely need to fix that. But we've already been bad, even with our starters on run D. We're talking about priorities on positions to fix in 2022. That's got to be near top the list. The Chargers have just been so putrid versus the run that even guys like Rex Burkhead can walk out looking like a superstar in the NFL. I was looking at fantasy football about guys to pick up for the last week, the championship week in fantasy, and Rex Burkhead was like the top added player. People are going to be disappointed next week when he's not playing the Chargers because it's 100% on the Chargers defense allowing 150 yards, 2 scores to the backup running back. That's not good. That's very telling of the Chargers' issues right now. Third down disasters. A big part of the reason why the Chargers lost this game is that they whiffed on almost every single third down on Sunday. If it was 3rd and 9, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 14, the Texans were going to convert. As a matter of fact, the Texans went 9 for 13 on 3rd down. That's absolutely putrid. The defense just could not get off the field. I think the Texans maybe only punted once that game. Very, very good. I would say the Houston Texans offense was pretty good in moving the ball down the field. They were very efficient, taking what the Chargers defense were giving them. But that's the problem. Chargers defense was giving them everything. Underneath, outside, corner, inside, post. It was all open. Not to mention the 150 yards allowed to Rex Burkhead. There was just no stopping them. And what did that result in? The best players on our team available to us this week never really got a shot. The best players on our team being Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen. They really just didn't get an opportunity to go out there and win this game. There was no chance for the offense to keep up when the defense was allowing points almost every single drive to the Houston Texans. It was a nightmare. And 3rd downs was a big part of that. Were we playing Davis Mills or Aaron Rodgers? The Bolts allowed 254 yards and 2 scores to the backup rookie quarterback. I think a part of that, too, again, we're still on the topic of defense. Coverage was just all over the place. Backup, DBs weren't doing their jobs. It looked like there was a little rust in Asante Samuel Jr. That's understandable. I think Nasir Adderley might have been the best DB we had out there on Sunday, and even he was getting exposed. And then taking a look at the linebackers, which I think is where the real problem, the real issue was on this defense on Sunday. The linebackers couldn't cover anything. After losing Drew Tranquill at one point in the game, the team absolutely just imploded. We saw Ogbong out there in coverage. We saw Murray in coverage. Those guys were getting absolutely shredded. And that's something that's really, really concerning if you're a Chargers fan. This is a new scheme, but right now in this particular game versus this particular team, it should not have looked this bad. Who do we need out there? We need Derwin James. Something very confusing that a lot of Chargers fans were victim to on Sunday was we all heard that Derwin was back. Derwin's going to be in this game. And then at the last second, once again, they said, well, he's active, but he might not play. Only in an emergency situation will Derwin see the field. And with the playoffs likely on the line this game, it was very confusing that the Chargers never let Derwin on the field. Was this the right call? This is a very, very hot topic of discussion during the game. Was this the right decision? Because essentially, you're risking the health of your superstar defensive player in order to try and make the playoffs in this moment. This was definitely a huge playoff implication game. Was it the right call not to let him see the field? The Chargers are still alive, but only barely. So in my opinion, this gamble will become more clear in week 17 and 18 if Derwin just comes in there and absolutely wrecks everything. But I want to ask you guys in the comments, was it the right call not letting Derwin play? Risking Derwin, but at the same time trying to protect your playoff spot, your playoff seed. Let me know in the comments. Speaking of players, Kenneth Murray that we were talking about before in coverage. Kenneth Murray was really inefficient versus a bad O-line. And the reason I say that is because I think Kenneth Murray, the main majority of his snaps came at edge. The Chargers were very, very short-handed this week. No Joey Bosa, no Chris Rumph, Kyler Fackrell's on IR. We wanted to see what Kenneth Murray had playing edge, and if he had any sort of sign, any sort of spark that would motivate the Chargers to continue to develop him as an edge player. We're hoping to get some semblance of what Micah Parsons became for the Dallas Cowboys. But he didn't really have any effect on the game this week. He didn't really generate any pressure, didn't really make any plays. And that's very concerning because this particular line, in the situation that they're in, they were already a bad O-line, but every single one of their starters outside of their right tackle was out. We were going up against a second and third string line of the Houston Texans, and Kenneth Murray couldn't bust through. Does he have a future with this team? I don't know. K9 trade talks are really starting to simmer with the fan base. What's his worth even? Maybe a late third-round pick? I don't know. Another question for you guys in the comments. Should we continue to see what we have in Kenneth Murray, just have a luxury depth piece? Or do the Chargers consider moving on from him and letting him find a team where he's a better scheme fit? Because right now, it doesn't seem like he is with the Chargers. I have hope and faith that maybe he can turn a corner in the offseason, but right now, it's definitely a hot topic of conversation. Next up, the turnover tragedy. Talking a little bit about the offense now. Justin Herbert's pick was bad, and 100% on him. Okay, you guys remember that play where he tried to toss it up to Josh Palmer, didn't get enough air underneath it, and that it turned out to be the first turnover of the game in favor of the Houston Texans. I think that one was on Justin, but that's okay. He played a solid game all around. I just think that particular interception was very bad timing. So that's one turnover against the Chargers. The next one, Justin Jackson's fumble, also very, very costly. The Chargers were driving. The Chargers had a chance to close the lead. The Chargers had a chance to make a comeback, which they've become kind of, known for in 2021. And that fumble completely lost the momentum of the team. After that, it was a full collapse. That's on Justin Jackson. But again, he had a very solid game. He kept us in this game. The pick six that we saw at the end, the game was already kind of put away, but that's also another thing that Justin needs to take a look at and try and clean up. He was trying to be a hero, and the Texans were ready for him. In singling out Justin Herbert, he made a few mistakes, a few costly ones. Again, his interception was an underthrown ball. I think that Josh Palmer was open. He didn't get enough air underneath it, and here comes the DB to undercut it and grab that interception. That was bad. And again, it felt like that was a turning point of the game, was that interception. It feels like things started to really move in the wrong direction because the Chargers offense needed to score on every possession. Because if they didn't, the Texans, we already knew they were going to score at every possession. The Chargers defense was just so bad. And turnovers like that just doesn't give you any shot at catching up. Overall, this wasn't Justin's worst game, but a few key mistakes definitely cost the Bolts in this one. Lastly, one good thing about this game. That's Joshua Kelly, not Justin Jackson. My apologies. Justin Jackson, an RB2 lock. One small positive from this game was Justin Jackson. He put up 162 scrimmage yards, 2 touchdowns. He kept us alive. Probably his best performance since he came in lieu of Melvin Gordon against the Steelers so many years ago. He looked great. He looked fantastic. Maybe, just maybe, he earned us a spot, or maybe he earned his spot on the roster next season. You guys let me know. After this performance, do you think Justin Jackson deserves a spot permanently on this roster going into the future as our RB2? Okay? So bottom line, guys, I'm still gutted. I literally slumped around the house all day yesterday. Super upset. I couldn't even eat. I was so nauseous. Bad game. Bad day. Bad game. Soul-crushing game. Game with huge consequences when it comes to the postseason. But the bottom line here, in my opinion, to wrap this game up in a bow, the depth was exposed. I think that's the biggest thing I want to take away from this. Depth was exposed big time. We were down a lot of players, but our lack of depth was put on blast to the maximum degree. If the Chargers can learn anything from this game, it's that we need to address our lack of depth in 2022 if we're going to be serious Super Bowl threats. Quality backup linemen, DBs, defensive tackles, coverage linebackers, offensive linemen. These need to be added right away. Because without them, we're going to end up right back where we started next season. Because in a COVID era of the NFL, it's no longer a luxury to have good depth. It's a necessity. This stuff is going to happen, and you have to be ready for it. Luckily enough for the Chargers, something like 9 draft picks, maybe 10, I don't even remember, $80 million in cap space. They have a window to address the depth, address starters, address pretty much everything before coming into the season next year. This is on Tom Telesco. Tom, I hate to say it. This game is a lot on you. It really is. The lack of depth was put on blast. But he has an opportunity to make up for that this offseason. Be aggressive. Sign as many people as you can while you have the opportunity. Get that depth fixed. Fix our lack of starters at cornerback, defensive tackle. Fix the run game. Make sure that Brandon Staley, in his second season, has the pieces he needs to work with in order to make the postseason, and quite honestly, at this point, a Super Bowl. Before we close this out, guys, a friendly reminder. We're still alive. We're still alive. As bummed out as I was, as bummed out as we all were, we are still alive. But we're going to have to play our tails off in Week 17 and 18 versus the Broncos and Raiders, as well as get a little bit lucky with the other games being played in the NFL. That being said, guys, bolt up. Bolt up. Be mad today, bolt up tomorrow. I'm still upset. I'm still nauseous. I'm still angry. But I'm behind this team. One bad week is not going to deter or bum me out or distract me from the potential that this team has in 2022. We always say, oh, next season, next season. This is the first year as a Chargers fan where I'm like, the data backs it up. The trends of the NFL backs it up. Young quarterback, check. Second-year head coach, check. Crap ton of cap space, check. Crap ton of draft capital, check. Super Bowl window for 3 or 4 years, check. Chargers kind of squandered the first one, but they were introducing a new head coach. Now is the time. Now is the time to make up for it, Tom. Go out there and fix this team. Give Brandon Staley every opportunity to make the Super Bowl. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. Please leave your thoughts and concerns. Hell, even vent if you have to in the comments section below. And congratulations to the giveaway winners once again. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. We're still alive.